Kara here from The Kara Golden Show. If you're not using Ironclad for contracts, you could be leaving millions on the table. Ironclad's AI instantly surfaces what matters: renewal dates, pricing terms, and obligations, so you can act quickly before opportunities slip away. That's why they're trusted by great brands like OpenAI, L'Oreal, Salesforce, and so many others. Find the savings hiding in your contracts at ironcladapp.com/podcast. That's ironcladapp.com/podcast.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to The Way Podcast, where we learn in English poco a poco or podcast by podcast. Today, we are looking at the idea of a bucket list. What is a bucket list? Why do we say bucket list? And some ideas that you can add to your bucket list when you make your own. Let's get into it.
Bienvenido al podcast de The Way. Si quieres aprender inglés y hablar con confianza, estás en el sitio correcto. Hemos ayudado a miles de personas como tú a mejorar su inglés y alcanzar sus objetivos. Visita nuestra web theway.es para conocer más sobre nuestros cursos online desde A2 hasta C1 y descubre cómo podemos ayudarte a avanzar en tu aprendizaje. Además, si necesitas una certificación oficial, también ofrecemos la opción de realizar el examen Language Pair cómodamente desde casa.
Okay, first of all, let me explain what a bucket list is. A bucket list is a long list. Well, it can be long or it can be short. Most people have long bucket lists. But a bucket list is a list of things that you want to accomplish. Accomplish is like lograr, right? Things that you want to accomplish in your life before you die. Now you said to me, Aurelia, but bucket is cubo. Okay, what does, a cubo have to do with, a list before you die? It actually comes from an idiom. Remember that an idiom is an expression, not idioma como lengua. It is an idiom as in an expression that we have in English, which means to kick the bucket, as in patear el cubo. The actual translation of the idiom means to die, as in rip, as in goodbye, adios, hasta luego, see you in heaven. So if you say to me, Aurelia, have you seen Pepe lately? And I say to you, no, didn't you know that Pepe kicked the bucket? It means, didn't you know that Pepe passed away or Pepe died? Right? So that's the expression. So a bucket list is technically all the things that you want to achieve in your life before you kick the bucket. That's where it comes from. What is the connection between kicking the bucket and dying? Again, everyone, I don't know. I didn't invent, the English language, but I think it's quite funny. I'm sure there's some idioms and expressions in Spanish that has no literal translation and they don't make sense. But anyway, let's continue. So I'm sure you have seen a bucket list or something like this similar on social media. Especially now with TikTok and Instagram and social media nowadays, people change these trends. But the bucket list has been around for years and years and years. I made my first bucket list 20 years ago. So this has been a thing for a very long time. So before we get into some ideas, I wanted to bring up something that you can do for homework, and that is to watch a film. There is a film that you can watch called The Bucket List, and it stars two very famous actors, Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman. They are two Hollywood legends. It's a great American film, and it's quite old. I think it came out in the early 2000s, if I'm not mistaken, 2007. So let me explain the general idea of the film. There are two older men, obviously Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman are, they're old guys. So there are two older men that they meet in a hospital, and they both they learn that they don't have a lot of time before they die. And one of them is quite a poorer man, and one of them is the richer man. So Jack Nicholson plays the CEO, the executive of the hospital, and he has a lot of money. And Morgan Freeman plays just a normal, average, middle-class man that doesn't have as much money. But they decide to escape the hospital and complete a bucket list. So Morgan Freeman has this list of ideas of what he would like to do before he dies. And so they decide to go off on adventures and go around the world completing the bucket list. Now, there are beautiful moments to the film, as there are in most films, so just keep an eye on that. But like I said, it's a wonderful way for you to improve your English. You can watch it in English with Spanish subtitles or in English with English subtitles. It depends on your level. I would recommend starting with Spanish subtitles if you are nervous and want to feel more confident. But if you think you have a good level, go with English subtitles. And if you feel even more confident, you can try with no subtitles. But to be honest, I'm the type of person that enjoys subtitles. So it's a weird thing to mention, but there are two types of people in the world at the moment. People who watch TV, like normal TV with subtitles, and people who watch it without subtitles. And I find that as I get older, I naturally want to always watch with subtitles. It doesn't matter if it's in English or Spanish or whatever. Do you do the same, or is that a weird thing just for me? Anyway, so I've explained what a bucket list is. I've told you that you can watch a film about a bucket list. So let me give you some ideas, okay? So I actually did this with my students last week. Now we're still in January, and my students came back from the Christmas holiday, and one of the first activities we did was to create a bucket list. And you know, a lot of my teenagers are like, "Oh, Aurelia, I just want to pass my exams," or you know, I had a lot of university students saying, "Oh, I just want to get my degree," as in degree meaning carrera de la universidad. Now, I understand that might be your first reaction, right? But especially now in 2026, you know, there's so much going on in the world. I think it's important. I really, really do feel that it's important to still create magic in our life, to create magic and to find hope. Maybe you make a list and you find that there are only 5 things that you want on your list. That's fine. Maybe you make a list and you have 200 things on your list. That's even better. That's fantastic. It's not about if it's realistic or unrealistic, or if it's stupid or not stupid. It doesn't matter, right? My oldest student was 60 and still putting their things on their bucket list, right? There is no right age. You're not too young and you are not too old. So, how I explained it to my students, remember that I live in Spain. So I explained it to my students to do local, as in Spain, things that they can do in Spain. So, for example, I mentioned to my students that on my bucket list, I want to walk the Camino de Santiago. All right? That's a personal for me. I also mentioned doing the tomato festival, La Tomatina, right? That's in the north of Spain. So there are lots of activities. One of my students said they wanted to go. There's a special party that happens on New Year's Eve in La Noche Vieja in Zaragoza. Apparently there's a big festival. Another student said Las Fallas in Valencia. So try and think local wherever you are, and then look at your continent. Now, this is this is a podcast for Spanish speakers. So I can assume that my listeners are in Spain or maybe in South or Central America, right? So go according to your continent. So if I was looking at Europe, I would say, guys, think about things like going to Paris or going to Disneyland, looking at the Aurora Borealis, which is in like Lapland and Finland, right? Maybe there's a beautiful cathedral you want to do. On my list is visiting Rome. Which is Roma. I have visited many Italian cities, but I've never been to Rome. So that's on my bucket list. So go continent. To be honest, I don't have a lot of information besides the general information on Central and South America. I know that Colombia has fantastic tourism, so maybe there's some touristic things there. There's going to the Amazon. Guys, I'm not going to assume. You know what is beautiful in and around your continents, right? So we've done local, then we went continent, and now we can open it up to the world. There are things all over the world that we can think of. There's the 7 wonders of the world. I never remember the word in Spanish. Maravillas. the wonders of the world. You know what I mean. The Machu Picchu, I think, is a seven wonder. The pyramids of Giza, things like that. Now think of other beautiful things. There's Niagara Falls. There's the Grand Canyon in the United States. There's the Great Barrier Reef in Australia that a lot of my students mentioned as well. So think about things like that in terms of traveling. After traveling, let's look at skills, habilidades. Now, we all have skills that we need to do for work, which is fine, but think of some other skills like cooking. Maybe there's a new type of dish that you want to cook. Maybe you want to learn a new instrument, learn a new language. You guys are already learning English, so maybe you can learn a different language on top of that. Maybe learn how to surf. I want to know how to sew. Not sew as in entonces. This is sew como coser, as in C-E-W, like with a machine. So that's on my bucket list. So there are so many things. I'd also like to learn how to build a house. It's such a weird thing but I always see on YouTube people building their own houses. I would love to do that. Okay, we can also look at things like personal growth. Now, your personal growth is your personal development, desarrollo, right? You could do a silent retreat where you don't talk for like 10 days. You can go to India and go to one of those yoga retreats. You can read 10 non-fiction books. There are so many things. What is development and growth for one person is maybe not the same for another. So, for example, I do a lot of journaling, as I'm sure if you are a regular listener, you might know this. So for me, journaling is not a big deal, right? It's not a challenge. No es un reto para mí. But maybe doing journaling every day might be a challenge for you. Maybe that's something that you would love to put on your bucket list. Building a snowman. I come from South Africa and I live in Spain. There's no snow. So I would love to build a snowman. That would be great. So things like that in terms of personal growth. We also have general adventure. So in terms of general adventure, think of your skydiving, paracaidismo, puenting, which is when you jump off a bridge. We have scuba diving. We have camping in the desert. Riding a camel. There are so many cool things. One of my bucket list sort of ideas was to ride a camel, and I was able to ride a camel and a donkey. So now I've ridden a horse, a camel, and a donkey. So that is now a tick on my bucket list, one of my things on my bucket list. Okay. We also have things that you could do to help others, like contribution or giving back. Right? Plant a tree, I think, is beautiful. I've always wanted to plant a tree. Not in my house, obviously, but out in the outside, in the free area, in the wilderness. You could volunteer. Volunteering is a wonderful thing. You could donate blood. I know in some countries it's very normal or popular to donate blood, and maybe not so much in other countries, but donating blood is always a good thing. Right? So there's always something for us to do in terms of giving back and helping other people. Right? So that's how I described it. Oh, I added one thing on the board. Another thing that I said was people that who enjoy food. If you enjoy food and cooking food and eating food and going to restaurants, you are considered a foodie. Now, a foodie is, like I said, someone that is sort of obsessed about food and loves trying new food. Personally, I'm a foodie. Any type of food, and I'm always excited to eat it. Right? So I had a couple of different food items on my list. So for example, I would love to eat pad thai in the Thailand area. One of my students said to me, Aurelia, I don't want to eat Chinese food in a Chinese restaurant in my city, in Murcia. That doesn't feel authentic. I want to go to China and eat traditional, authentic Chinese food in the country. Another student said that they wanted to have sashimi in Japan, So there are so many different types of food items that you could also put on your list. Now, I demanded that my students do at least 5. So my adults, I said at least 5. You need to have ganas and enthusiasm and inspiration in your life, especially now that we don't know what's happening with politics around the world. So just give yourself a little bit of hope. Put 5 things down on your bucket list. And maybe you're going to find the more you write down the words in your bucket list, the items and activities, maybe you will find more and more inspiration. Now, I have mine physically written down. Some of my students wrote it in their notebook, and other students put it into their phone. There's no right way. You can put it wherever you want. And if you want to share with me and the family at Douai any of the things on your bucket list, contact us on our social media. We would love to hear from you. Now, the final thing that I would love to teach you is some vocabulary that would be great for creating a bucket list. Number 1 is once in a lifetime. Una vez en la vida, right? Once in a lifetime means an activity that is not normal. Like most people do skydiving only once in their life. Like I know that they are adrenaline junkies, so people who love adrenaline that do it a lot, but usually there are some activities that are once in a lifetime. Another good expression is to face your fears, afrontar los miedos, like to do something that is very scary, but it would help you to face your fears. On my bucket list, I have to hold a tarantula para coger. Tarantula. A tarantula in English, because I'm afraid of spiders. Right. Another good one is to step outside of your comfort zone. Our comfort zone is the same in Spanish, zona de cómodo. And to step outside means to expand your comfort zone. Do something different. Do something that is a little bit scary, but like in a good way. And the final one is also a very nice expression. And this expression is make it count. When you make something count, you do it to be intentional. You do it to make your time and your life more meaningful. Because if we just wake up and go to school and just wake up and go to work, that's not living, guys. So that's my invitation for you today, is to create a bucket list. And if you don't want to do a bucket list, that's fine. Let's think of a final question. So here's my question. Right. So take a moment at the end of this podcast and think of one experience that you want to have this year in 2026. Right? Just one experience. Something that excites you or scares you a little. What would it be? Right? So I think that's fantastic, because actually I made a bucket list for 2026. So I have a life bucket list, but I also make an annual bucket list. And the annual bucket list is small things, little things. Try a new cooking recipe, go to a new city, go bowling, go to the cinema, things like that. But it's just a nice way to bring fun and adventure back into your life. Okay, everyone, that's it for today. I hope you enjoyed today's episode, and I will catch you next week. Bye.
Si disfrutaste de este episodio y quieres llevar tu inglés al siguiente nivel, te invitamos a descubrir nuestros cursos online en theway.es, diseñados para mejorar tu fluidez y confianza en situaciones reales. Hemos ayudado a miles de personas como tú a transformar su aprendizaje. Visita ahora theway.es y realiza nuestro test de nivel interactivo de manera gratuita. Además, si necesitas una certificación oficial, también ofrecemos la opción de realizar el examen de Mid-Third cómodamente desde casa.